Whew. Showtime.
Interpreting reality and putting it on screen is something that all writers can brag about. But initiating a movement and conversation after a scene is done takes a brilliant mind. For TV and film, the rule is more show than it is tell. And although in TV one can get away with more dialogue than film and cinema, it still must be given to the audience in a way that leaves a lasting impression. This iconic scene played on South African television and broke a taboo as it spoke of an issue that affected women in communities around Africa. The loud banging of pots and pans became a symbol of support. It was a wake-up call that did not use violence against the abuser, but alerted the entire community until the relevant authorities showed up. Each show Chisanga writes, directs, produces, or is simply part of touches the soul of the audience. With some successful shows up her belt, Generations, Muvango, The Wild, Soul City, A Place Called Home, Intersections, Coed, she makes her storytelling relatable, even to the simplest of beings. This is a tale of a brilliant mind and a resilient soul. Chisanga.
Tell us about your journey from the first script you wrote, I don't know if it was Generations officially, to where you're at right now.
I'll start a little bit earlier than that. I grew up in Zambia, and then when my family moved to South Africa, then I went to university in Cape Town. And I studied something that's completely unrelated to what I'm doing now. And I started working, and I was working in retail. And I was very, very, very unhappy. And so someone said to me, and I was ready to quit, but I didn't even have a plan. I knew that this is not what I wanted to do. I had been at that job for about 2 years and a bit. And what I knew was that I loved media. And I literally did not have a clear vision, but I knew that I wanted to be in media. And one of our customers said, so I said to him, I'd love to get into media. I don't know what I'm going to do. But I know that it seems like you have to know someone in order to enter the industry. So he said, well, you know me. And I didn't, and I was like, so what do you do? How do I get in? And he gave me a phone number of someone to call. This person said to me, look, if you want to work long-term in this industry, you should probably be on a soapie. You've never studied script writing, so make it your business to learn the craft. So read as much as possible, attend workshops. And in South Africa, there's an organization. At the time, it was called the South African Scriptwriters Association. So the person said to me, join that organization, because they usually have workshops that teach you about writing. They have skills development type workshops. They have job network type situations. So I did that. I literally was like a child. I followed the advice. I've read every book I could find about script writing. I joined the South African Scriptwriters Association, and they had, I think maybe a few months into it, I heard there was a notification that Generations is looking for interns. And at the time, all the writers, except for the show creator, Mfundi Vundla, I think all the writers at the time were white people writing for an all-black show. So they had this initiative where they wanted to find young black writers. And they would train you. They knew that you probably didn't have the experience, so the idea was to train you. So obviously we were excited, and I didn't know anything about anything. Up until that point, I had not written one script in my life. And I had read, I had been reading and preparing myself. So I was starting to understand the principles. And so I applied, and we were shortlisted. There were about 30 of us nationwide. And throughout the process, they would eliminate throughout the training process, they would eliminate certain people. So it was part training, part testing. And at the end of it, some people dropped out voluntarily, others were just eliminated. And by the time we finished, there were, I think maybe 5 of us left. And so we continued and worked on that show. So it was sort of on-the-job training for about 2 years. We literally were junior storyliners, junior script writers. And what we learned very early on is that you are only as good as your last job. That taught me that you need to do well in every job. Every script you have to try and do as well as possible, you know? So that's how I started. And then shortly after that, Big Brother Africa started. They were looking for writers from the continent. The job itself was just summarizing, this is what happened in the house. And of course, we were excited. It's this global show. It's the first on the continent. And so because I had the Generations experience, even if it was a completely different way of writing, they didn't care. And they kind of gave us a bit of basic training. Then I had I had a job on, I think it was Soul City. That was my first drama job. And it was a very difficult project to work on with a very difficult head writer. But I stuck it out because he actually taught me a lot of what I know now. He gave me the discipline to write for that kind of a show. And once you have a reputation, you know, whether it's just, you know, you're a hard worker or you don't quit or your work is actually really good, what happens is that because of the relationships that you build along the way, that's how you get hired for the next job and the next job. And then only later did I start doing a bit of Zambian work, and it's not nearly enough. but a lot of my career was basically built in South Africa.
You said Zambian work. I did see your name pop up as like the writer of Fever. It was a big show here. How do you manage, how do you identify your strength as a creative in an industry where seemingly everybody wants to do the same thing? Everybody just wants to have sort of like the same voice, and that's how it just is.
So I didn't personally create and write Fever. There was a project presented to us. They had an idea that they just wanted to kind of, professionalize and develop. So I was involved in the writing. I didn't create the show, just to clarify that. So it was so well received in Zambia. I think a big part of being a creative and a writer is that you have to know the kind of story that you want to tell. And you have to be strong in knowing what the story is that you want to tell. What I learned to understand early on is people relate to it's something that the stories that work are the ones where people have an emotional connection, you know? It can be a story about vampires. It can be a story about villages. It can be a story about whatever, but as long as you have an emotional connection with people, you can actually tell any stories.
What is the one thing you want to check off your bucket list before the end of this year?
There's a project that I'm looking at. I can't say very much about that I'd love to work on. That hopefully will be sort of locked off by the end of the year. But the general idea is to be able to do work on international platforms. You know, as much as creating content for home is still like a thing, but that's dependent on money. So there's a couple of projects that I'd love to get off the ground but we're now in September. We've got 3 months. I don't know. But there's a couple of projects that I'd love to do, like finish developing for like a Zambian market, but that's money dependent. So those are the 3.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah.
We might be seeing you on screen in the credits, Chisanga Kabinga, writer.
That's 2021. I'm just trying to finish the thing. I'm just trying to finish the project. Yeah. But
that's great. Thank you so much for coming through.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. I hope to see you soon.
Absolutely.
Awesome. This has been Entertainment Exclusive with me, Mary. Thank you, Chisanga.
Thank you.